In this video, I'm going to rank a selection of covers from Rousseau. This is the second video I've made on this now, so if you haven't watched the first, make sure to check that out after. One of the pieces we'll be covering today is not only one of the hardest piano pieces that Rousseau has played, but it also happens to be one of the hardest absolute piano pieces in the world, which is very exciting. So make sure to stick around to the end to witness absolute madness. We have a lot to cover. Let's get straight into it. First piece that we'll be analysing is a piece called Torrent, or Etude Opus 10 No. 4 by Chopin. Okay, obvious things out of the way first. The tempo is extremely fast and aggressive with a lot of sudden dynamic changes, which all add to the piece's character. It uses a lot of patterns and sequential sequences, which can help with learning the piece since some sections utilise very singular fingering. However, they are difficult. I recommend learning pieces like these hand separately at a slow tempo to enforce good habits and a solid foundation. A good example of a pattern that Chopin uses in this piece is the call and response sequence, used at 30 seconds. The right hand initially plays a fast semiquaver melodic idea, while the left hand plays static chords, outlining harmony. The hands then swap over, and the melodic idea, now played in the left hand, is repeating the pattern from the right hand. You might think that playing the pattern in the left hand is just as hard as playing it in the right hand, and theoretically you'd be right. However, a weakness that many players, including myself, face is we are usually more agile and faster with the right hand, since we are much more accustomed to seeing those faster ideas in the right hand, not so much in the left. This can result in a lack of dexterity, making faster melodic ideas played with the left hand much more challenging, and this piece really does shine a light on that. Another point to mention is that a lot of these semiquaver sequences are very conjunct, meaning all the notes are very tightly packed together, and it makes it very difficult to maneuver your hand around to play all the notes if you don't have the optimal fingering to do so. So I definitely put the time aside to go through with a teacher, or even just by yourself, making sure that you have all the optimal fingerings written down and noted, just so it will save you a lot of time in the future when you try and increase the tempo up to speed. You might find that you can play a section at a slower tempo completely fine, and then when you try and increase the tempo, the fingering just falls through. So be mindful of this when you initially choose your fingerings, as ideally you don't want to go back and change it, just because it might interfere with the muscle memory that's already formed. The dynamics are so important for this piece, and playing all of the notes and still having the control to play the dynamics and bringing out the melody over all the chaos is definitely challenging. For this reason, I'll be putting it in high SS+ tier. This piece is incredible. The amount of textures and different sounds that come out the piano when you play this is insane. Now, I did some research on this piece, and it's broken up into 3 movements, and each movement corresponds to a different part of a poem written by a French poet. I'll put the name up on the screen. I don't want to mispronounce it. But yeah, all of the movements correspond to a different part of the poem, and the first one, called Ondine, is about a water nymph who attempts to lure a man into her underwater kingdom, but is ultimately rejected by the man after professing her love for him. And now, after that, she then disappears with an immense shower of rain and a cackling laugh. Now, I don't know about you, but when I listen to this piece, I can almost picture the story happening with the music. Even from the beginning, the way the melody is played in the left hand with the shimmering right hand chordal trills almost gives that feeling of water shimmering with the sunlight. There's something off about it. It seems like unusually quiet, as if there should be something happening, but it's ominous in a way. Sort of mysterious. The opening figure is already really technical. It's really hard to make every note sound with alternating figures like this, especially since it's in groups of 3, which separates the 2 repeating chords. So not only are you repeating chords in one hand, which is, as I said, technical, it's also in irregular shapes. The harmony is also sometimes really hard to figure out, as it blends together to create feelings as opposed to just staying in one key center, and I think that ties back into the ominous feeling that was created right from the beginning. Yeah, it's just something about the music, it doesn't seem quite right. And I think that's also something to do with the clash between sort of the mythical world that the nymph is living in, and the man, obviously in just regular civilization. So you do have these sort of clashing worlds, and I think that has something to do with why the harmony is sort of blending together, and so you get this really weird dissonance. Okay, now one obvious section to talk about in Ondine is the climax, where the water nymph is rejected by the man in the story. Main ideas with this piece are you almost have to reflect water in the way you play this. The tempo is constantly being pulled around, and the shimmering effect and fast sporadic runs, which carry through the whole piece, are incredibly technical. But when they're played evenly and with control, they create a really nice atmosphere. I think the difficulty ranking for this piece is a no-brainer. High divine tier. Or maybe even in its own tier. Just completely separate from the list. I might move all the other ones down, just from how insane this piece is. Of course, this piece isn't just one movement, there are 3. So moving on to the second movement, it's called Le Gibet. Now, what's quite off-putting about the story behind this movement is it paints a picture of a solitary corpse suspended from a gallows in a desert setting, bathed in the red light of a setting sun. I think Ravel's music captures this incredibly well with the eerie and somber atmosphere of the poem. There's this persistent mourning bell tolling in the distance, and that's represented by this B-flat ostinato, which is heard through the entire piece. This movement's definitely it's a lot slower. It's based on this sort of deeper harmony and this sort of low dissonance, which, you know, as I said, really does paint this picture. In terms of difficulty, this is definitely a lot easier than the other 2 movements, so 1 and 3. I think the difficulty with this one is getting that feeling across, getting that sort of mournful bell tolling in the distance. Okay, right. Number 3, we have SCARBO. Now, this part of Gaspard de la Nuit, I think I'm right in saying this piece is about a mischievous goblin who plays tricks on the narrator in the poem. And straight away, from the way this movement's written, it's very spiky and frantic, which I think does resemble the goblin very well. You can definitely pick up on that sort of mischievous character straight from the beginning of the piece. Now I think part of this effect is coming from all those really fast repeating notes, and the way you play those is you alternate between different fingers on the same note, and that is quite difficult if you're not used to it. It's really important to get that balance and just the right amount of pressure that you're applying to the key each time. Otherwise the key will remain pressed down while you're alternating, and then obviously one note will play. Or you do too little and you get these really irregular sounding notes. So yeah, finding the balance on the piano that you have is really important. It will be different on other pianos. No piano's the same. You know, another thing about this piece is because it's so fast, I think there's a huge emphasis on being precise and accurate with the notes. So coordinating these rapid repeating notes while, you know, with multiple fingers, while you're also coordinating the jumps in the left hand and other chords around that. Oh, it's just insane. I think this movement is one of the hardest absolute, you know, movements in the whole of the piano repertoire in the world. I think if you're at a stage of playing this, I mean, well done. Just everything about this piece screams, you know, mischievous. It's got this sort of playful character, while also being quite disturbing. You know, it's got a few low range octaves and dissonances down there. So yeah, I think it's similar to the first one, except the ominous nature is a lot more easy to define. It's easier to see, and there's a lot more play with the character and the articulation and dynamics as well. It's less like a waterfall and more like just up front. I think I'll put movement 2 in maybe medium. Yeah, I'll put it in medium tier movement 2. But I think SCARBO above movement 1, it's, yeah, divine tier. High divine tier, way at the top. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'd also like part 1, where I talk about even more of Rousseau's arrangements and covers. Thanks for watching.